Hey everyone, it's Aussie Dad and welcome to my video. This time we're playing Theme Park Tycoon 2 and the best part about it is you're actually seeing a park that I built. I do mention this later on at the end of the video that it took a long time to do. I think this park actually took roughly around 2 weeks to complete, and that was probably spending anywhere between 3 hours to sometimes 6 hours per day, just doing different bits and pieces. Because it's really hard because, of course, Roblox has that thing in it with, not Roblox, Theme Park Tycoon 2, the days change. So you can get, what, the days change. That's not the right word either. All right, so it goes day and night. So, you've got whatever the timing for the game is. Half of it will be during the day, the other half will be at night. I don't even know what you call that. Anyway, comment below, let me know. Educate me, please, so I can get this right. So sometimes when you're doing things, it can be quite tricky when you're building on the outside where you are getting the sunlight. When you're doing more sort of inside different things, it can be a little bit easier because you can put lights on and different things like that. So it's pretty cool. So Theme Park Tycoon 2 happens to be one of my favorite games to play, and the reason being is because you don't just have to do things where you build a park. You do need to build a park to get money. So in this park, I've actually got an underground part where there's roller coasters and different rides, and so you'll see that there's different characters. They're walking to go into my thing. You'll notice that at the beginning of the video, not so much now because we're in the maze, but they'll be walking through, but they'll actually be going under the ground. So that's one of the beauties of it. So that's set up. That's my little money maker downstairs. So at the top, I can focus that on being more fun for people who visit the park. They can see like some interactions and whatnot. The good thing is it also sort of allows you to discover what you can and can't do. So one of the things that you'll end up seeing in this park is there is a like roller coaster theme park in the water, like underwater. So you can swim around and you can get to see it, and you can still go on rides underwater and a whole bunch of other different things. So it's really, really cool. The other thing too is like like Minecraft, how you can build up in the air in creative mode, you can do exactly the same sorts of things in Roblox. The only difference is when I've played Minecraft before, I don't know if this has changed, but before in the past, if you wanted to build up in the sky, you sort of had to build a bit of a tower so that you had something to build off first. Might have changed now. Maybe you can just actually put like a block up in the air. I'm not sure. But when I remember when I played it, that was the case. So the other good thing about Theme Park Tycoon 2, of course, is you can design your own roller coaster, or you can have like custom made stuff. So, and if you've played Theme Park Tycoon 2 before, you'll know all those different things. So a little bit about this park. So what inspired this park? So one of the things I always wanted to do was have a park, or a creation that you can have where there was a maze. I can't remember what I was doing at the time, but something inspired me to do it, and I was like, oh, that would be an awesome idea. Let's make a maze. Woo! So my eldest son, he was doing this thing called, or watching this series on YouTube at the time called backroom videos. Apparently what backroom videos are, that they're supposed to be scary without there being anything actually scary in it. So they try to scare people with just like effects and different noises and all that sort of stuff. So that's why when you go through part of the maze and there's like, flickering lights that go on and off, that's part of sort of the thing that they do in backroom videos, but I didn't do it in this case to try and make it scary. I just did it because I wanted to try and make it a little bit tricky to get through the maze, because I thought, well, it's no fun if you can just sort of get through everything first go. We'll try and make it a little bit tricky, so to give people a challenge. The good part is if you do get stuck, you can watch through the video and then see where you went wrong. Even in this video, I get lost in my own maze. I end up going back. There's a part where there's an underwater roller coaster park. I managed to get out of that. I start going through part of another maze, and then somehow along the line there's a part of it where it's a little bit too dark and I couldn't see properly, and I ended up accidentally turning around and heading back to the underwater part. So I kept that in there because I thought that would be pretty funny, you know, getting lost in your own park, you know, the very thing that you've created. The other thing about the park is at the end of it, there's like a little room up in the sky sort of thing. It's not that flash. I didn't, at the time I thought, yeah, this is awesome. Now when I look at it, I'm kind of like, probably could have done better. Well, I'm almost about to start reading the story, so I'm gonna head over to myself. So enjoy the rest of the video and I'll catch you at the end. Alright, that's it from me for this part anyway. Here's the story portion. Hey everyone, we've come to the story portion of the video, and this time we're going to be listening to part 2 of the original, the very first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. Alright, enjoy the story. Monday. Well, it's finally October and there are only 30 days left until Halloween. Halloween is my favourite holiday, even though Mum says I'm getting too old to go trick-or-treating anymore. Halloween is Dad's favourite holiday too, but for a different reason. On Halloween night, while all the other parents are handing out candy, Dad is hiding in the bushes with a big trash can full of water. And if any teenagers pass by our driveway, he drenches them. I'm not sure Dad really understands the concept of Halloween, but I'm not going to be the one who spoils his fun. Tonight was the opening night of the Crossland High School haunted house, and I got Mum to agree to take me and Rowley. Rowley showed up at my house wearing his Halloween costume from last year. When I called him earlier, I told him to just wear regular clothes, but of course he didn't listen. I tried not to let it bother me too much though. I've never been allowed to go to the Crossland haunted house before, and I wasn't going to let Rowley ruin it for me. Roderick has told me all about it, and I've been looking forward to this for about 3 years. Anyway, when we got to the entrance, I started having second thoughts about going in. But Mum seemed like she was in a hurry to get this over with, and she moved us along. Once we were through the gate, it was one scare after another. There were vampires jumping out at you, and people without heads, and all sorts of crazy stuff. But the worst part was this area called Chainsaw Alley. There was this big guy in a hockey mask, and he had a real chainsaw. Roderick told me the chainsaw has a rubber blade, but I wasn't taking any chances. Right when it looked like the chainsaw guy was going to catch us, Mum stepped in and bailed us out. Mum made the chainsaw guy show us where the exit was, and that was the end of our haunted house experience right there. I guess it was a little embarrassing when Mum did that, but I'm willing to let it go this one time. Saturday. The Crossland haunted house really got me thinking. Those guys were charging $5 a pop, and the line stretched halfway around the school. I decided to make a haunted house of my own. Actually, I had to bring Rowley in on the deal because Mum wouldn't let me convert our first floor into a full-out haunted mansion. I knew Rowley's dad wouldn't be crazy about the idea either, so we decided to build the haunted house in his basement and just not mention it to his parents. Me and Rowley spent most of the day coming up with an awesome plan for our haunted house. Here was our final plan. There's a little map out. It says Hall of Screams, Lake of Blood, Bottomless Pit, Rat Tunnel, Maze of 1,000 Skulls, Knife, Alley, Hand Whore, Death Slide, Acid Lake, and then the exit. It's actually a pretty cool little plan. I don't mean to brag or anything, but what we came up with was way better than the Crossland High School haunted house. We realised we were going to need to get the word out that we were doing this thing, so we got some paper and made up a bunch of flyers. I'll admit, maybe we stretched the truth a little in our advertisement, but we had to make sure people actually showed up. It's a little poster that says haunted house with live sharks. Obviously there's no live sharks. By the time we finished putting the flyers up around the neighbourhood and got back to Rowley's basement, it was already 2:30 and we hadn't even started putting the actual haunted house together yet. So we had to cut some corners from our original plan. When 3 o'clock rolled around, we looked outside to see if anyone had showed up. And sure enough, there were about 20 neighbourhood kids waiting in line outside Rowley's basement. Now, I know our flyers said admission was 50 cents, but I could see that we had a chance to make a killing here. So I told the kids that admission was $2 and the 50-cent thing was just a typo. The first kid to cough up his $2 was Shane Sneller. He paid his money and we let him inside, and me and Rowley took our positions in the Hall of Screams. The Hall of Screams was basically a bed with me and Rowley on either side of it. I guess maybe we made the Hall of Screams a little too scary, because halfway through, Shane curled up in a ball underneath the bed. We tried to get him to crawl out from under there, but he wouldn't budge. I started thinking about all the money we were losing with this kid clogging up the Hall of Screams, and I knew we had to get him out of there, quick. Eventually, Rowley's dad came downstairs. At first, I was happy to see him because I thought he could help us drag Shane out from under the bed and get our haunted house cranking again. But Rowley's dad wasn't really in a helpful mood. Rowley's dad wanted to know what we were doing and why Shane Sneller was curled up under the bed. We told him that the basement was a haunted house and that Shane Sneller actually paid for us to do this to him, but Rowley's dad didn't believe us. I admit that if you looked around, it didn't really look like a haunted house. All we had time to put together was the Hall of Screams and a lake of blood, which was just Rowley's old baby pool with half a bottle of ketchup in it. I tried to show Rowley's dad our original plan to prove that we really were running a legitimate operation, but he still didn't seem convinced. And to make a long story short, that was the end of our haunted house. The good news is, since Rowley's dad didn't believe us, he didn't make us refund Shane's money, so at least we cleared $2 today. Sunday. Rowley ended up getting grounded for that whole haunted house mess yesterday. He's not allowed to watch TV for a week, and he's not allowed to have me over at his house during that time. That last part really isn't fair, because that's punishing me, and I didn't even do anything wrong. And now where am I supposed to play my video games? Anyway, I felt kind of bad for Rowley, so tonight I tried to make it up to him. I turned on one of Rowley's favourite TV shows and I did a play-by-play over the phone so he could kind of experience it that way. I did my best to keep up with what was going on the screen, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure if Rowley was getting the full effect. Tuesday. Well, Rowley's grounding is finally over, and just in time for Halloween too. I went up to his house to check out his costume, and I have to admit, I'm a little jealous. Rowley's mum got him this night costume that's way cooler than his costume from last year. His night outfit came with a helmet and a shield and a real sword and everything. I've never had a store-bought costume before. I still haven't figured out what I'm going to go as tomorrow night, so I'll probably just throw something together at the last minute. I figure maybe I'll bring back the toilet paper mummy again. But I think it's supposed to rain tomorrow night, so that might not be the smartest choice. In the past few years, the grown-ups in my neighbourhood have been getting cranky about my lame costumes, and I'm starting to think it's actually having an effect on the amount of candy I'm bringing in. But I don't really have time to put together a good costume because I'm in charge of planning out the best route for me and Rowley to take tomorrow night. This year, I've come up with a plan that'll get us at least twice the candy we scored last year. Halloween. About an hour before we were supposed to start trick-or-treating, I still didn't have a costume. At that point, I was seriously thinking about going as a cowboy for the second year in a row. But then Mum knocked at my door and handed me a pirate costume with an eye patch and a hook and everything. Rowley showed up around 6:30 wearing his night costume, but it didn't look anything like it looked yesterday. Rowley's mum made all these safety improvements to it, and you couldn't even tell what he was supposed to be anymore. She cut out a big hole in the front of the helmet so you could see better and covered him up in all this reflective tape. She made him wear his winter coat underneath everything, and she replaced his sword with a glow stick. I grabbed my pillowcase and me and Rowley started to head out, but Mum stopped us before we could get out the door. Man, I should have known there's a catch when Mum gave me that costume. I told Mum there was no way we were taking Manny with us because we were going to hit 152 houses in 3 hours. And plus, we were going to be on Snake Road, which is way too dangerous for a little kid like Manny. I should never have mentioned that last part, because the next thing I knew, Mum was telling Dad he had to go along with us to make sure we didn't step foot outside our neighbourhood. Dad tried to squirm out of it, but once Mum makes up her mind, there's no way you can change it. Before we even got out of our own driveway, we ran into our neighbour, Mr. Mitchell, and his kid Jeremy. So, of course, they tagged along with us. Manny and Jeremy wouldn't trick-or-treat at any houses with spooky decorations on them, so that ruled out pretty much every house on our block. Dad and Mr. Mitchell started talking about football or something, and every time one of them wanted to make a point, they'd stop walking. So we were hitting only about one house every 20 minutes. After a couple of hours, Dad and Mr. Mitchell took the little kids home. I was glad, because that meant me and Rowley could take off. My pillowcase was almost empty, so I wanted to make up as much time as possible. A little while later, Rowley told me he needed a potty break. I made him hold off for another 45 minutes, but by the time we got to my grandma's house, it was pretty clear that if I didn't let Rowley use the bathroom, it was going to get messy. So I told Rowley if he wasn't back outside in 1 minute, I was going to start helping myself to his candy. After that, we headed back out on the road, but it was already 10:30, and I guess that's when most grown-ups decide Halloween is over. You can kind of tell because that's when they start coming to the door in their pyjamas and giving you the evil eye. We decided to head home. We made up a lot of time after Dad and Manny left, so I was pretty satisfied with how much candy we took in. When we were halfway home, this pickup truck came roaring down the street with a bunch of high school kids in it. The kid in the back was holding a fire extinguisher, and when the truck passed by us, he opened fire. I have to give Rowley credit, because he blocked about 95% of the water with his shield, and if he hadn't done that, all our candy would have got soaked. When the truck drove away, I yelled out something that I regretted about 2 seconds later. "We're calling the cops." The driver slammed on the brakes and he turned his truck around. Me and Rowley started running, but those guys were right on our heels. The only place I could think of that was safe was Grandma's house, so we cut through a couple of backyards to get there. Grandma was in bed already, but I know she keeps a key under the mat on her front porch. Once we got inside, I looked out the window to see if those guys had followed us, and sure enough, they had. I tried to trick them into leaving, but they wouldn't budge. Well, I guess now that we're safe in our own house, you can't get us. After a while, we realised the teenagers were going to wait us out, so we decided we were just going to have to spend the night at Grandma's. That's when we started getting cocky, making monkey noises at the teenagers and whatnot. Well, at least I was making monkey noises. Rowley was kind of making owl noises, but I guess it was the same general idea. I called Mum to tell her we were going to crash at Grandma's for the night, but Mum sounded really mad on the phone. She said it was a school night and that we had to get home right that instant, so that meant we were going to have to make a run for it. I looked out the window, and this time I didn't see the truck, but I knew those guys were hiding somewhere and were just trying to draw us out. So we snuck out the back door, hopped over Grandma's fence and ran all the way to Snake Road. I figured our chances were better there because there aren't any streetlights. Snake Road is scary enough on its own without having a truckload of teenagers hunting you down. Every time we saw a car coming, we dived into the bushes. It must have taken us a half hour to go 100 yards. But, believe it or not, we made it all the way home without getting caught. Neither one of us let our guard down until we got to my driveway. But right then, there was this awful scream, and we saw a big wave of water coming towards us. Man, I forgot all about Dad, and we totally paid the price for it. When me and Rowley got inside, we laid out all our candy on the kitchen table. The only things we could salvage were a couple of mints that were wrapped in cellophane and the toothbrushes Dr. Garrison gave us. I think next Halloween I'll just stay home and mooch some Butterfingers from the bowl Mum keeps on top of the refrigerator. Thursday. On the bus ride into school today, we passed by Grandma's house. It got rolled with toilet paper last night, which I guess was no big surprise. I do feel a little bad because it looked like it was going to take a long time to clean up. But on the bright side, Grandma is retired, so she probably didn't have anything planned for today anyway. Wednesday. In third period, Mr. Underwood, our phys ed teacher, announced that the boys will be doing a wrestling unit for the next 6 weeks. If there's one thing most boys in my school are into, it's professional wrestling, so Mr. Underwood might as well have set off a bomb. Lunch comes right after phys ed, and the cafeteria was a complete madhouse. I don't know what the school is thinking having a wrestling unit, but I decided if I don't want to get twisted into a pretzel for the next month and a half, I'd better do my homework on this wrestling business. So I rented a couple of video games to learn some moves, and you know what? After a while, I was really starting to get the hang of it. In fact, the other kids in my class had better look out, because if I keep this up, I could be a real threat. Then again, I better make sure I don't do too good. This kid named Preston Mudd got named Athlete of the Month for being the best player in the basketball unit, so they put his picture up in the hallway. It took people about 5 seconds to realise how P. Mudd sounded when you said it out loud, and after that, it was all over for Preston. Thursday. Well, I found out today that the kind of wrestling Mr. Underwood is teaching is completely different from the kind they do on TV. First of all, we have to wear these things called singlets, which look like those bathing suits they used to wear in the 1800s. And second of all, there are no pile drivers or hitting people over the heads with chairs or anything like that. There's not even a ring with ropes around it. It's just basically a sweaty mat that smells like it's never been washed before. Mr. Underwood started asking for volunteers so he could demonstrate some wrestling holds, but there was no way I was going to raise my hand. Me and Rowley tried to hide out in the back of the gym near the curtain, but that's where the girls were doing their gymnastics unit. We got out of there in a hurry, and we went back to where the rest of the guys were. Mr. Underwood singled me out, probably because I'm the lightest kid in the class, and he could toss me around without straining himself. He showed everybody how to do all these things called a half Nelson and a reversal and a takedown and stuff like that. When he was doing this one move called the fireman's carry, I felt a breeze down below and I could tell my singlet wasn't doing a good job keeping me covered up. That's when I thanked my lucky stars the girls were on the other side of the gym. Mr. Underwood divided us up into weight groups. I was pretty happy about that at first, because it meant I wasn't going to have to wrestle kids like Benny Wells who can bench press 250 pounds. But then I found out who I did have to wrestle, and I would have traded for Benny Wells in a heartbeat. Fregley was the only kid light enough to be in my weight class, and apparently Fregley was paying attention when Mr. Underwood was giving instructions, because he pinned me every which way he could imagine. I spent my 7th period getting way more familiar with Fregley than I ever wanted to be. Tuesday. This wrestling unit has totally turned our school upside down. Now kids are wrestling in the hallways, in the classrooms, you name it. But the 15 minutes after lunch where they let us outside is the worst. You can't walk 5 feet without tripping over a couple of kids going at it. I just try to keep my distance. And mark my words, one of these fools is going to roll right onto the cheese and start the cheese touch all over again. My other big problem is that I have to wrestle Fregley every single day. But this morning I realised something. If I can move out of Fregley's weight class, I won't have to wrestle him anymore. So today I stuffed my clothes with a bunch of socks and shirts to get myself into the next weight class, but I was still too light to move up. I realised I was going to have to gain weight for real. At first I thought I should just start loading up on junk food, but then I had a much better idea. I decided to gain my weight in muscle, not fat. I've never been all that interested in getting into shape before, but this wrestling unit has made me rethink things. I figure if I bulk up now, it could actually come in handy down the road. The football unit is coming in the spring, and they split the teams up into shirts and skins, and I always get put on skins. I think they do that to make all the other shape kids feel ashamed of themselves. If I can pack on some muscle now, it'll be a whole different story next April. Tonight, after dinner, I got Mum and Dad together and told them my plan. I told them I was going to need some serious exercise equipment and some weight gain powder too. I showed them some muscle magazines I got at the store so they could see how ripped I was going to be. Mum didn't really say anything at first, but Dad was pretty enthusiastic. I think he was just glad I had a change of heart from how I used to be when I was a kid. If you work out regularly, you can get big muscles. Oh, muscles are gross. But Mum said if I wanted a weight set, I was going to have to prove that I could stick with an exercise regime. She said I could do that by doing sit-ups and jumping jacks for 2 weeks. I had to explain that the only way to get totally bulked up is to get the kind of high-tech machines they have at the gym. But Mum didn't want to hear it. Then Dad said if I wanted a bench press, I should keep my fingers crossed for Christmas. But Christmas is a month and a half away, and if I get pinned by Fregley one more time, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. So it looks like Mum and Dad aren't going to be any help, and that means I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands, as usual. Saturday. I couldn't wait to start my weight training program today. Even though Mum wouldn't let me get the equipment I needed, I wasn't going to let that hold me back. So I went into the fridge and emptied out the milk and orange juice and filled the jugs with sand. Then I taped them to a broomstick and I had myself a pretty decent barbell. After that, I made a bench press out of an ironing board and some boxes. Once I had that all set, I was ready to do some serious lifting. I needed a spotting partner, so I called Rowley, and when he showed up at my door wearing some ridiculous getup, I knew I made a mistake inviting him. I made Rowley use the bench press first, mostly because I wanted to see if the broomstick was going to hold up. He did about 5 reps and he was ready to quit, but I wouldn't let him. That's what a good training partner is for, to push you beyond your limits. I knew Rowley wasn't going to be as serious about weightlifting as I was, so I decided to try out an experiment to test his dedication. In the middle of Rowley's set, I went and got this phony nose and mustache Roderick has in his junk drawer. And right when Rowley had the barbell in the down position, I leaned over and looked at him. Sure enough, Rowley totally lost his concentration. He couldn't even get the barbell off his chest. I thought about helping him out, but then I realised that if Rowley didn't get serious about working out, he was never going to get to my level. I eventually had to rescue him because he started biting the milk jug to let the sand leak out. After Rowley got off the bench press, it was time for my set, but Rowley said he didn't feel like working out anymore and he went home. You know, I figured he'd pull something like that, but I guess you can't expect everyone to have the same kind of dedication as you. Wednesday. Today in geography we had a quiz, and I have to say, I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. The quiz was on state capitals, and I sit in the back of the room, right next to this giant map of the United States. All the capitals are written in big red print, so I knew I had this one in the bag. But right before the test got started, Paddy Farrell piped up from the front of the room. Paddy told Mr. Ira that he should cover up the United States map before we got started. So, thanks to Paddy, I ended up flunking the quiz. and I'll definitely be looking for a way to pay her back for that one. Thursday. Tonight Mum came up to my room and she had a flyer in her hand. As soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what it was. It was an announcement that the school was having tryouts for a winter play. Man, I should have thrown that thing out when I saw it on the kitchen table. I begged her not to make me sign up. Those school plays are always musicals, and the last thing I need is to have to sing a solo in front of the whole school. But all my begging seemed to do was make Mum more sure I should do it. Mum said the only way I was going to be well-rounded was by trying different things. Dad came into my room to see what was going on. I told Dad that Mum was making me sign up for the school play, and that if I had to start going to play practices, it would totally mess my weightlifting schedule. I knew that would make Dad take my side. Dad and Mum argued for a few minutes, but Dad was no match for Mum. So that means tomorrow I've got to audition for the school play. Friday. The play they're doing this year is The Wizard of Oz. A lot of kids came wearing costumes for the parts they were trying out for. I've never even seen the movie, so for me it was like walking into a freak show. Mrs. Norton, the music director, made everyone sing My Country 'Tis of Thee so she could hear our singing voices. I did my singing tryouts with a bunch of other boys whose mums made them come too. I tried to sing as quietly as possible, but of course I got singled out anyway. I have no idea what a soprano is, but from the way some of the girls were giggling, I knew it wasn't a good thing. Tryouts went on forever. The grand finale came with auditions for Dorothy, who I guess is the lead character in the play. And who should try out first but Paddy Farrell. I thought about trying out for the part of the witch because I heard that in the play the witch does all sorts of mean things to Dorothy. But then somebody told me there's a good witch and a bad witch, and with my luck I'd end up getting picked to be the good one. Monday. I was hoping Mrs. Norton would just cut me from the play, but today she said that everyone who tried out is going to get a part. So, lucky me. Mrs. Norton showed the Wizard of Oz movie so everyone would know the story. I was trying to figure out what part I should play, but pretty much every character has to sing or dance at one point or another. But about halfway through the movie, I figured out what part I wanted to sign up for. I'm going to sign up to be a tree, because 1, they don't have to sing, and 2, they get to be in Dorothy with apples. Getting to peg Paddy Farrell with apples in front of a live audience would be my dream come true. I may actually have to thank Mum for making me do this play once it's all over. After the movie ended, I signed up to be a tree. Unfortunately, a bunch of other guys had the same idea as me. So I guess there are a lot of guys who have a bone to pick with Paddy Farrell. Wednesday. Well, like Mum always says, be careful what you wish for. I got picked to be a tree, but I don't know if that's such a good thing. The tree costumes don't actually have armholes, so I guess that rules out any apple throwing. I should probably feel lucky that I got a speaking part at all. They had too many kids trying out and not enough roles, so they had to start making up characters. Rodney James tried out to be the Tin Man, but he got stuck with being the Shrub. Friday. Remember how I said I was lucky to get a speaking part? Well, today I found out I only have one line in the whole play. I say it when Dorothy picks an apple off my branch. That means I have to go to a 2-hour practice every day just so I can say one stupid word. I'm starting to think Rodney James got a better deal as the Shrub. He found a way to sneak a video game into his costume, and I'll bet that really makes the time go by. So now I'm trying to think of ways to get Mrs. Norton to kick me out of the play. But when you only have one word to say, it's really hard to mess up your lines. Well, that's the end of part 2 for the original Diary of a Wimpy Kid story. I hope you enjoyed that. Part 3 will be out next week. And also, I hope you enjoyed seeing the park that I created, or the big maze thing. And it took a very long time to do. So hopefully it can inspire some of you guys to also come up with your own different types of parks as well. Feel free to let me know about them. Comment on the videos. And share some of the things that you've done on Roblox, maybe yourself as well. All right, take care, look after yourselves, and that's it from me. All right, bye for now.